can challenge to a game of snooker, or, of course, whether we complete a triathlon.
After a nervous hour or so of Hob collating the results, he announced that we were joint winners with 33 points each. We were both delighted to have won, but at the same time absolutely delighted to have drawn. Because if one of us had won single-handedly outright, we wouldn't have had the backup of being able to take a quick refreshment break in between paragraphs that were badly received or poor jokes.
Hob later announced it was always going to be us. It was always going to be us, but he wanted to milk the moment and make a day of it, and rightly so. We remember that day forever.
Hob is an interesting character. I'm sure some people in this room will know him as a mature, sensible, well-presented and upstanding member of society. But it's safe to say that his teenage years were a completely different story.
He's evolved in the last 10 years from a wannabe football hooligan, wearing Rockports,
A sovereign ring,
a full Fred Perry tracksuit,
and the famous Burberry cap,
to the man he is today.
easily the least fashionable man you will ever meet. Ever.
With a truly awful collection of clothes that most middle-aged men would be ashamed to wear.
And to paraphrase one of Hobb's trademark quotes,
He couldn't give a monkey.
our childhood is littered with memories of Hob, honestly, doing absolutely ridiculous things during this phase. He's a ridiculous bloke, honestly. There is an endless list of things, and we could genuinely be here all day and all night talking about them, but there's just a few that stand out.
At sixth form, he played the age-old prank of setting off the fire alarm so that the whole school had to evacuate the building. This is pretty standard schoolboy banter, but more amusing in this case when you put it into the context that nobody had dared him to do it. He wasn't being egged on, and nobody was even aware that he had done it until a few weeks later.
He was simply walking down the corridor, he saw it, he fancied it, he smashed it in. Before casually walking outside to stand up and be counted with the rest of the lads. And it wasn't until a few weeks later of the teachers, Grafton and the likes, interrogating chief suspect Shavy, that Hob had casually mentioned to us in the canteen that it had been him. And it wasn't a surprise to any of us.
As kids, we used to have regular sleepovers with up to 6 or 7 of us at any one night, staying at each other's house in the summer holidays. One night at Hobbs, we pitched a tent in the back garden.
After a brief appearance on Mercer FM, requesting our song at the time, which was Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba, we waited until Terry and Denise had gone to bed, and then we snuck back inside.
We stuck the telly on, turned the volume down so as not to wake Terry and Denise, and as intrigued young boys do, headed straight for the Playboy Fantasy Channel for the 11:50 PM 10-minute freebie.
After 10 minutes of engrossed viewing, we made a fairly easy group decision that 10 minutes simply hadn't been enough.
Bob then took matters into his own hands and headed straight for the niece's purse in the kitchen.
He picked up the old school corded phone that was at the bottom of the stairs, and he proceeded to ring the 0800 number on the screen. Terry and Denise were asleep at the top of the stairs, just a few metres away.
A woman answered and Hob whispered, "I'd like to order the Playboy channel, please."
"Okay, sir, not a problem. Do you have your card details to hand?" the lady replied.
"Yes."
"Great, so would you like the 3, the 6 or the 12-month subscription?"
"Can I just get another 20 minutes?" he was.
We were all crowded around the phone, and I'm sure it was the laughter at that point that mainly woke Terry and Denise, and by the looks of it, they were none the wiser until today.
Let's also not forget the absolute shocker Hob had in the first few months after passing his driving test.
So, after having written off his first car on day one, when he crashed into the now famous band The Enemy, whilst trying to perform a dramatic U-turn on Princess Drive without signalling because we basically gone the wrong way to Sainsbury's and wanted to turn around quickly, when he could have just gone to the roundabout, gone round the roundabout, and just swung out, car came in, smashed the car in. 2 days later, he then proceeded to drive the next car the wrong way down a one-way street.
As he swerved to avoid the two oncoming lanes of traffic, he planted car number 2 straight into the lamppost and wrote it off. And if memory serves me right, Jebs was in the back drinking a pint of Carling from a glass, which pretty much sums the bloke up, doesn't it?
As Terry escorted Hob, as Terry took Hob down the post office a few days later to register car number 3, the cashier said to Terry, or Tom, or both at the same time, "Tom, would you like to tax it for 6 or 12 months?"
Do you do weekly? Terry interrupted.
One of my personal favourite memories of Hob is from 2006, when just the two of us flew to Germany for the World Cup, hoping to buy some black market tickets for England's game versus Sweden. Our Ryanair flight to Dusseldorf, of course, landed nowhere near Dusseldorf. And then we blew basically our whole budget getting a taxi to Dusseldorf, which left us no chance of buying tickets, no chance of finding accommodation, and not even really enough money to buy a few beers. We watched the game in a fan park on the telly, slept rough and flew home the next day. But that's a great memory that I share with Hob, and I'll always remember that.
Another ridiculous Hob moment was during a school trip to Florida, where he played up to his role as the class clown. At the end of each day, Hob and my cousin Phil completed their standard fast food run. One night, after returning with our food orders, Hob decided it would be a good idea to start pebble dashing the walls of our hotel room. Pizza ended up everywhere, on the walls, the ceiling, the bathroom, and all over lampshades. But it didn't stop there. Hob then graffitied his name on the walls with toothpaste, leaving the walls covered in huge minty blue letters, simply saying H-O-B, Hob.
And why did he do that sort of thing? Well, that's because the sort of thing he did, regularly. And as in this case, he usually got away with it.
He was a normal lad, but he had a switch.
He had a switch that turned him into a lunatic. Genuinely, and it's a switch that deep down a lot of us in this room know still exists.
On more than one occasion, while some of the lads were around his house, he would get a sharp carving knife from the kitchen and threaten people to get into the bath at knife point. True story. Fully clothed with the water running.
It says a lot about Hob's temperament at the time, but people didn't laugh it off. They got in the back. And they even sang "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream" at his next demand.
They were laughing, but they were scared. He wasn't bullying anyone, he was just having a laugh. But I'm sure there's a few people in the room who can't relate that sort of behaviour to the Thomas Sean Hobman that they know. And the one that sits here today pretending to be a sensible bloke.
For all the stupid things Hob has done over the years, and there's thousands more, we can talk about them tonight, his character, personality and principles have remained the same. He is easily the most reliable man you will ever meet, honest to the core, loyal and selfless. If you make plans with Hob, they are set in stone. He doesn't pull out of things, he doesn't change his mind, he's a man that sticks to his word.
He once drove all the way down to Cornwall just for one night so as not to let us both down for a 3-man lads weekend we had planned. He could no longer make the full weekend for some reason or another, but as we reminded him about the above mentioned principles that he prides himself on, he knew he'd have to make the 8-hour round trip just for a few beers, and he did just that when nobody else would have.
Throughout my many years of playing rugby, Hob has always volunteered his time and encouragement to help me be my best. He's more than happy to come to the rugby club and just endlessly kick balls back to me for hours on end, if it means helping a friend out. He often initiates such sessions, easy for me to say, out of the blue, and it would be the same for anyone else in this room. And I'm sure that Zoe can relate to this sort of dedication to others.
When Zoe recently trained for and completed the Coventry Half Marathon, Hob was fully committed to supporting her on her training runs and also on the day, when he pretty much ran the whole thing in his jeans just to be with her along the way.
He's a great bloke. He also shows Zoe unbelievable support during her musical performances, and it's safe to say that he is completely and utterly devoted to your success.
Hob is a fantastic sportsman himself. Regularly, he competed in triathlons, duathlons, other athletics events, and representing the school at various club teams in football, basketball and cricket. He especially excelled at rugby at school for Old Leamingtonians, Broad Street and eventually Bath.
It was our years playing together for Old Leamingtonians that made us stronger as a group of friends between the ages of 5 and 15. We had an incredible team during that period, and I'm sure that Tim and Terry and everybody else that followed us around and gave us great support during that time will vouch that without exaggeration we only lost a handful of games during that decade really, over the 10 years.
We absolutely dominated mini and junior rugby in Coventry and Warwickshire. Hob was an integral part of that team, a leader, a talisman, and the one you could rely on to be there week in, week out. Great memories.
So before we finish, it would just be remiss of us to not quickly tell the story of how Hob proposed to Zoe. Mount touched on it, Zoe, I think Hob touched on it, and we can't do it full justice, so apologies to Hob if we don't obviously give it full justice, but we'll give it a go.
Hob organised for the two of them to have a weekend in London, and they made a trip to Greenwich Park where they had spent some memorable time together in the early stages of their relationship. It was Zoe's 26th birthday, and Hob gave her a present whilst they sat on the park bench.
It was a notebook, and inside Hob had written 25 reasons why he loved her, one on each page, and one for every year of her life. He asked Zoe to read through them all.
Zoe was bawling her eyes out by the time she got to page 26, which read, "Will you marry me?" Hob was on one knee, ring in hand, and the rest is history.
The time and thought that went into this, as well as the best man process that we mentioned earlier, absolutely epitomises Hob. This is a bloke that lives for the big moments, the memory moments, and like the rest of his family and Terry who sits before us, he takes the important things in life very seriously, and for that we've got a lot of respect for him.
He's also stitched us all up because any of the lads who propose in the future will always be compared to this. So, nice one, mate. Cheers.
So just to finish off, seriously, Hob, it's been a privilege and an absolute pleasure, so thank you. You found someone very special to share the rest of your life with, and it gives us immense pleasure to invite everyone to stand and raise your glasses in a final toast.
To love, life, laughter, and happily ever after, Mr. and Mrs. Hobman. Thank you.